The Rocky Mountains are not merely a line of peaks on a map. They are the great, rugged spine of North America, stretching more than 3,000 miles from the frostbitten reaches of northern Canada to the arid deserts of New Mexico. For millennia, they have stood as ancient witnesses to the drama of the continent. Its birth, its ice ages, its storms, its migrations of animals and people. When you first see them rising on the horizon, it feels as though you are glimpsing the very bones of the earth. Their snow-dusted summits, often shrouded in cloud, seem to hold secrets whispered only to the wind. Our journey begins at dawn, as the first rays of sunlight ignite the highest peaks in the Canadian Rockies. The light spills like molten gold across ridgelines and glaciers, revealing mountains that stand like cathedrals of stone. Banff National Park is our first stop, a sanctuary where time slows down and nature speaks in hushed tones. Towering peaks rear abruptly from emerald valleys, and the blue-green lakes, fed by ancient glaciers, glimmer like precious jewels. Standing at the edge of Lake Louise, the water so perfectly still that it mirrors the surrounding summits, one feels as though they have stepped into a dreamscape. The air is sharp with the scent of pine and glacial melt, and distant waterfalls murmur softly, as if singing a hymn to the mountains themselves. As we wander deeper into Banff, we encounter the slow, relentless force that shapes this entire region: ice. Glaciers, moving only inches per day, carve their way through valleys, grinding rock into fine powder known as glacial flour. This silt is what gives the lakes their surreal turquoise color. It is impossible not to be humbled in the presence of these rivers of ice, knowing they have been at work for tens of thousands of years, sculpting and reshaping the very land we stand upon. Winter transforms the park into a kingdom of snow and silence. The forests are muffled under white blankets, and every living thing must summon its strength to endure. We spot a herd of elk pawing through the snow in search of buried grasses, their breath hanging in the air like ghosts. High above, mountain goats cling to cliffs, their coats thick against the cold. Each step they take is sure and confident. They are masters of this vertical world. When the wind picks up, it carries with it the faint howl of a distant wolf, reminding us that this wilderness is still alive, still untamed. Climbing higher into the Rockies is like traveling through the layers of the earth. First come the dense forests of spruce and fir, rich with the scent of resin. Then, as we ascend, the trees thin and eventually vanish, replaced by alpine tundra, a fragile world of lichens, mosses, and wildflowers that bloom only for a few short weeks each summer. Here, storms sweep in with little warning. One moment the sky is clear and brilliant, the next it is dark and violent, thunder rolling through the valleys and lightning illuminating the peaks. We find shelter under an outcrop of rock, watching as the tempest lashes the landscape, feeling at once small and electrified by the raw power of nature. And yet, for every moment of danger, there is an answering moment of peace. On still summer nights, the lakes turn to glass, perfectly reflecting the Milky Way above. The only sounds are the calls of loons and the occasional rustle of wind through the pines. Time seems to stretch here, as though the mountains themselves are inviting us to pause and simply be. Our path next takes us south, following the mighty Snake River as it begins its journey in Yellowstone National Park. It meanders through canyons, deserts, and fertile plains for more than 1,000 miles before joining the Columbia River. For the Shoshone and Nez Perce peoples, this river was life itself, providing salmon, water, and a highway through the land. We imagine what it must have been like for Lewis and Clark, paddling its currents in 1805, hoping this serpentine waterway would lead them to the Pacific. Along its banks we find evidence of volcanic eruptions and floods that shaped its canyons, reminders that this landscape is still alive, still changing. Farther along our journey, we arrive at Jenny Lake, hidden like a sapphire in the heart of Grand Teton National Park. This lake, carved by glaciers 12,000 years ago, is so clear that it seems to dissolve the boundary between water and sky. We hike the trail that skirts its shoreline, where sunlight flickers through pine needles and the air smells of warm earth and resin. At Inspiration Point, we pause to watch the world spread out below us, a panorama of forest, lake, and towering peaks, and we feel as though we are standing at the edge of eternity. The road climbs higher, carrying us toward the alpine zones where avalanches are a constant risk and the land is stripped to its essentials. Trees no longer grow here. Instead, jagged ridges rear up against the horizon, etched like the frozen crest of some ancient wave. In this harsh, wind-scoured world, life clings on against all odds. Yet the reward for reaching such heights is unmatched, a view that stretches across layers of mountains, each paler than the last, until they vanish into haze. Northward we go to Jasper National Park, the largest of its kind in the Canadian Rockies. Here, darkness is a gift. The park is a designated dark sky preserve, meaning the stars blaze unhindered by city lights. On a clear night, we lie back on a blanket and watch the Milky Way spill across the heavens like powdered sugar. Around us, the wilderness is alive. The distant bugle of elk echoes through the valleys, a bear forages unseen in the underbrush, and wolves may be padding silently along some distant ridge. The feeling is both humbling and exhilarating. We are visitors here, temporary guests in an ancient kingdom. At last we stand before Mount Robson, the tallest peak in the Canadian Rockies, its summit piercing nearly 4,000 meters into the sky. Clouds swirl around its crown, and waterfalls tumble down its cliffs, joining the newborn Fraser River at its base. This mountain feels less like an object to be climbed and more like a sovereign to be honored. We stand in awe, listening to the wind roar in its heights, feeling the deep silence that seems to radiate from its mass. Crossing into Montana, we find ourselves at Logan Pass, one of Glacier National Park's crown jewels. Snow lingers late here, sometimes into July, and marmots whistle from the meadows as we walk the boardwalk trail. The wildflowers are in riotous bloom: purple lupin, red paintbrush, and golden glacier lilies, turning the meadows into living tapestries. Nearby, Lake Louise and Moraine Lake continue the theme of impossible beauty, their turquoise waters perfectly framed by craggy peaks. These places are so iconic they have been immortalized on postcards, paintings, and even currency, yet nothing compares to seeing them with your own eyes. Throughout the Rockies, the story of glaciers is written on the land. At Athabasca Glacier, we see metal markers indicating where the ice once reached. Each sign represents a year, a reminder of how swiftly the glacier is retreating. Standing on the glass-floored skywalk nearby, we peer down into the valley below and feel suspended between past and future, between the ancient ice and the warming world that is causing it to vanish. In Colorado, the Colorado River slices through Glenwood Canyon, creating walls of stone that rise like cathedral columns. Rafting its rapids gives us an intimate look at the power of water as it shapes the land. The spray cools our faces, and the roar of the river drowns out every other sound, until it feels as though we are part of the current itself. Berthoud Pass, one of the most famous routes across the Continental Divide, carries us onward. We imagine the miners and settlers who once crossed here with wagons and mules, braving storms and landslides in their search for fortune. The Valley of Jackson Hole spreads before us next, nearly 48 miles long, its floor dotted with ranches and framed by the jagged teeth of the Teton Range. The town of Jackson at its southern tip hums with energy, a mix of ski culture, cowboy heritage, and modern art. Crested Butte, once a struggling mining town, has reinvented itself as a hub for adventure. In summer, the hills are carpeted with wildflowers so vivid they seem almost painted. In winter, skiers carve down powdery slopes under bluebird skies. The story of this town is one of resilience, of communities that refuse to fade. Big Sky Resort lives up to its name, offering over 5,000 acres of skiing, with vertical drops that challenge even seasoned athletes. In the off-season, the lifts carry hikers and bikers to alpine meadows where marmots sun themselves on rocks and eagles wheel overhead. The sense of freedom here is intoxicating. Far to the south, we find Cloudcroft, perched high in New Mexico's Lincoln National Forest. The air here is cool and scented with pine, a sharp contrast to the desert stretching below. The village feels like a secret, with its historic cabins, quiet trails, and night skies ablaze with stars. It is easy to see why travelers have sought refuge here for more than a century. Durango greets us with the sound of the Animas River rushing past its historic downtown. We soak in the geothermal hot springs, steam rising around us as the sun sets behind the mountains. The mineral-rich water is said to have healing properties, but what it heals most is the spirit, washing away the dust of the road and leaving only calm. Idaho Falls tells a story of transformation. Once a place of roaring rapids, it now hosts serene falls shaped by human hands, providing hydroelectric power. Yet the town still honors its past, its riverwalk lined with flowers and art. Despite challenges, even a nuclear accident in the 1960s, it remains a place of optimism and growth. Magic Dam and its broad reservoir form a summer playground for boaters, campers, and anglers. The sunlight flashes off the water, and children leap from docks with joyous screams. In winter, the lake freezes into a vast sheet of ice, where the only sounds are augers drilling fishing holes and the occasional cheer when someone hauls up a shimmering trout. Bozeman, Montana, may be one of the fastest-growing towns in the Rockies, but it still retains its mountain soul. The streets buzz with students from Montana State University, with entrepreneurs, and with climbers fresh off the trails. The Bridger Range looms nearby, offering year-round adventure, skiing in winter, wildflower hikes in summer. And so, season after season, the Rockies reveal their many faces. In spring, the snowmelt sings in 1,000 streams, and valleys explode with new life. In summer, the days stretch long and golden, inviting exploration. Autumn brings fire to the aspens, entire hillsides turning gold. And in winter, silence descends again, the peaks wrapped in white, the world seeming to hold its breath. Traveling through the Rockies is more than a road trip. It is a pilgrimage. It is a journey into the heart of wilderness, where the raw power of the earth meets the quiet of the human soul. Every ridge tells a story, every river hums a song. The Rockies do not simply offer views, they offer transformation. They remind us of our smallness and our strength, of the wildness we still carry within ourselves. And as we leave these mountains behind, we carry their memory, like the taste of pine-scented air, like the sound of rushing water, a reminder that the world is still vast, still beautiful, and still waiting to be explored.